Hey everyone, now that the GT500 has finally arrived, today I want to talk about the process and experience I went through in purchasing and acquiring this car. So anyone who has tried to or has purchased the GT500 knows it can be a very drawn out and frustrating experience. Unless you don't mind paying a markup or you know somebody at a Ford dealer, you typically spend a lot of time making phone calls to dealers, chasing leads, and inquiring with other people on forums about a good place to get a car from. So it was around November of 21 when I really committed to purchasing one of these cars. And I went down to my local dealer like most people will, and I wanted to inquire about where I would be on their build and how many they expected to get. So they normally get about 2 cars, and at that point I was already number 5 on their list. So I'm like, well, this is not gonna pan out. They're not gonna get that many cars, and 22 was already looking to be a really bad year because of this never-ending supply chain issue. So I started calling around to some of my local dealers, and it was the same thing to every local dealer I called. It was either no allocations left or it's gonna be like $25,000 markup or more for a car, especially for a carbon fiber track back car. So I started calling some deals a little bit further away. I started looking at ads posted on places like Auto Trader of builds that they had already been accepted. And it was the same thing, no allocations, big markups, or they wouldn't sell to anybody out of state. So I had a few people reach out to me on the channel and recommend some dealers. Unfortunately, initially, none of that was panning out. I did have one person reached out to me for my 350 form, recommend dealer out in Pennsylvania that I actually did put a $500 deposit with. I was actually number 2 on their list, and they were only expecting 1, but they had several dealers in that network, and he said they could possibly get more. So that didn't pan out, but luckily, you know, they gave me a refund with no issue. They were really good over there, and that was a pretty simple process, but unfortunately that didn't pan out. So I was basically down to just kind of keeping an eye on local inventories in that point. So I was hoping some maybe some leftover 21s could possibly pan out. I was looking at a car out in Long Island. It was a carbon fiber track pack race red, and they had been there for like 6 or 7 months at that point. So I called them initially just to see what the markups were. They said it was 20 over. So I'm like, you know what, let me just let this soak for a while. Maybe I'll get lucky. Maybe they'll kind of really want to get rid of this thing because it's been sitting for so long and it's the middle of the winter. So a few days before I decided to go out there, the car actually sold. So unfortunately, I did not get a chance to actually look at that car or try to work any sort of deal with it. So basically at that point, I was down to, I'm gonna have to maybe get really lucky if someone just happens to point out a good dealer to me, or I'm just gonna have to keep an eye on the incoming 22 inventory. Since it was about April at that point, and the builds were the 22s were gonna start getting built very soon, so they were gonna start to show up on the local inventory, and I'm just have to keep an eye on those inventories, and maybe I'll get lucky. Well, that's where my luck really turned around for acquiring one of these cars. Chad Powell, who had been watching my channel and saw that I was interested in getting one of these, had recommended his dealer, Jim Ellis Ford in Sandy Springs, Georgia, to me. He said, hey, you know, I bought a car from these guys. They were really good. They're MSRP plus a few add-ons, and it was a very good process dealing with them. So he gave me the number of the general manager, Kevin Jeffries, who I spoke with, who was a total gentleman. And he basically said, all right, so the deal right now is we used all our allocations. We don't have any left, but we expect to get more. We do have 1 car coming in for stock that is blue. Now, initially, I really wasn't interested in another color. Spending this much money on a car, I really didn't want to compromise very much. There was 2 main options that were no compromise for me. That was carbon fiber track pack and tech package. But I was willing to compromise a little bit on the color. Obviously, race red was choice number 1, but I had been looking at black, white, and blue with white stripes. Those cars I had kind of been watching as secondary colors. So I actually left a build spec with Kevin for a red one. So if another allocation opened up, he would call me back. So a few days went by, and I said, you know what? I emailed Kevin back, and I said, just send me the spec on that blue one you have coming in. I really didn't know a lot about the spec of the car at that point, but I'm like, you know, let me just take a look at it, because, you know, there's not a lot of opportunities this year for these cars. So he sends me the build spec. It is carbon fiber track pack tech package, Atlas blue with the over-the-top white stripes. So I did initially inquire with him about seeing if we could change the build, but it was clean scheduled priority 1, which means you cannot change it. It is accepted by Ford. What you see is what you get. Take it or leave it. So you know, I knew Atlas Blue was not a new color at that point. It had been on Edge and Explorer for a number of years, but it was new to Mustang for 22. So I never really paid a lot of attention to it, so I figured, you know what, this is probably my second choice color, this blue with white stripes. And so I'm like, you know what, let me go see this color in person, because if there's one thing I've tried to beat into people's heads on all my videos is, if you are looking to purchase a Ford vehicle, you have to look at the color in person. The Ford website does an absolutely terrible job with their digital renderings, and the colors often look dramatically different in person versus what they do on the internet. So you have to look at the colors in person. So that's what I did. I went on the local inventory. I found just a regular 4-cylinder Mustang that was in stock at a dealer 40 minutes away from me, and I said, let's go. Drove down there to see the color in person. Well, it was a very cloudy, overcast day. The car's sitting on the lot. I wasn't impressed. It looked kind of dull, very boring, and to add insult to injury, they just happened to have a used race red GT500 base car sitting there. And I'm looking at the race red, and I'm looking at the Atlas Blue, and I'm just like, the red looks a lot better. So, you know, that happened. And then a couple days later, I actually went over to my local dealer because they had an Atlas Blue F-150 in stock. Now, this day was very different. This was a beautiful, sunny, clear day, the kind of day where you drive cars like this. And in the sun, Atlas Blue was dramatically different than it was on an overcast day. The metallic in the paint was very pronounced. The car was much brighter. It had a lot more vibrant colors to it, and I was so much more impressed after seeing it in the sun. And I went home, I thought about it, and you know, to have a race red 350 already, and then to buy a race red 500, since they're both on the S550 platform, the cars would look almost the same. They look so similar, unless maybe I did stripes on the GT500, they would look so much alike. And I thought about it after how much better it looked, and I'm like, you know what? Atlas Blue will be a great contrast to race red. And I just said, you know what? This is a really good price on this car. It's MSRP plus $7,000 for the add-ons, which is way better than most dealers. Most dealers are charging you just, you know, 25 over, and you get nothing of value for that 25,000 versus getting, you know, some add-ons for 7,000. Like, this is a really good deal for this car. So I called him back and I said, Kevin, if it's still available, I'll put a deposit on that Atlas Blue you have coming. He said, yep, it's still available. So I wired him $5,000 to hold the car. Now, this was around, I think, May at this point. The car had not been built, so it was basically just an accepted build at this point. So at that point, Kevin had put me over to one of the salesperson, Gio, who was my salesperson for the car, and I communicated through him. Now, the car was originally scheduled to be built on the first week of June. Now, the day before the car was supposed to get built, or the day of, I get a message from the salesman, Gio, and he said, hey, the car got pushed back a week. Now, honestly, I wasn't surprised. I know a lot of other people that had their builds pushed back several weeks, if not months. So I'm like, well, all right, well, hopefully it only stays a week, that's not a big deal. Well, I ended up calling Ford Performance, and they said, you know, it's only a week right now, and we'll see from there. So the window sticker got generated shortly after that, and if you look on the bottoms of the window stickers, there's a date on there underneath the MSRP. That's the date that the parts go to the factory, and the following week, the parts went to the factory on June 13th. That's when they started the process to build this car. On the top of the window stickers is the blend date. This car got blended, meaning the body and the chassis come together on the 22nd. Now, because this is a carbon fiber track pack car, and it has vinyl stripes, it goes to the mod shop after that. So that means basically they put the carbon stuff on, they put the vinyl on in-house, and that takes a few days. So I believe it was the 26th or 27th this car was officially produced, meaning it is built, it is done. Just for reference, if you get a painted stripe car, it adds about 3 weeks to the process because it has to go to Penske to have the painted stripes put on off-site. So that was basically end of June. The car was fully produced and ready for transport. Now, I had been calling Ford Performance about once a week just to kind of get the updates on the car, to kind of keep tabs on when, you know, it was going to show up at the dealer and when I kind of needed to start doing more stuff on my end. So the car spent a total of about 3 weeks in transit because it came by rail. Spent about a week at the yard in Flat Rock, about a week in transit itself, and about a week at the yard in Atlanta before it went to Jim Ellis Ford. Now, I called Ford Performance on the 22nd of July just to kind of get my weekly update, and they had just gotten an update that the car had been loaded and was headed to the dealer. So I texted my salesman, Gio. I said, hey, the car is inbound. And 20 minutes later, he texted me and said, it is here. So he sent me some photos of the car. It had arrived safely at the dealership. They did a check over of it. It got there with no issues, and everything was good to go. And now they would start the process of doing everything they needed to do on their end. So my buddy Chad Powell that really helped me with this car, he did me another solid. He happened to be in the area. He stopped by, sent me some nice pictures of the car, sent me some video of the car. I posted that video a few weeks ago, and he basically double-checked it for me and told me everything looked good and it was good to go. So now it was the process for getting everything put on and getting the add-ons put on. Now, I had spoken to Chad as well as several other people that had purchased GT500s from Jim Ellis Ford, and everybody had nothing but good things to say. They use very reputable people and shops to do all these add-ons. So after hearing that, I was very comfortable about having someone else put these add-ons for the car because I was going to do all this stuff anyway. So to me, you know, it wasn't really a big deal paying that markup for the add-ons because this was stuff I was going to do. I have my local guys do anyway. So with the process at the dealer, it took about 8 or 9 days to get everything done. So the first thing they do to the car is they bring it in after it's checked in to make sure everything's good, and they put on all the accessories. They put on the splitter wickers, and the air oil separator. So that got done, and then in-house they have a mobile window tint guy come in. He tinted everything around the car exactly to how I wanted it, perfectly done. They did the interior protectant on site, and then the car gets flatbedded over to AP3 Atlanta, which after talking to a few people down there, that is a very reputable shop that does a lot of high-end cars for celebrities and athletes, and they're supposed to be one of the best tint shops in the Atlanta area from talking to Chad and some other people. So, and the fact that they flatbed it, they don't drive it over there, so they did a spectacular job with transporting it and getting everything put on. And they had the car, I believe everything was fully done with the car in about 8 or 9 days. So that was basically by the end of July, it was basically ready to go on the dealership end. Now, probably the most frustrating part of this whole process was transportation. I was not going to use one of the brokers or some random person I didn't know. I was going to stick to the large, well-known shippers that everybody's heard of that, you know, buys and sells cars and moves cars around. You know, they're more expensive, but you're supposed to get what you pay for. You know, a much quicker, more efficient door-to-door service. So the first big name company I was calling them weeks in advance because I wanted to get ahead and make sure I was booked up early. First company I called kept telling me, call back next week, I don't have anything. Call back next week, I don't have anything. So I was like, I can't keep doing this. So then I called another big well-known company, and I booked them 8 days before the car was supposed to be ready. And I basically told them, all right, I think that was the 22nd, which was the same day the car actually showed up at the dealer. I booked with them, and I said, all right, the car's not going to be ready till the 30th. Well, 29th rolls around, the car wasn't ready. And it probably wasn't ready for a couple of days. So I called that second company back, and I said I was going to see kind of where we were before I had to tell them we had to push the date back. And I said, hey, just kind of trying to find out where we're at in the schedule. It tells me 7 to 10 days. I'm like, all right, well, I don't have to reschedule. It's going to be 7 to 10 days, no problem. So it got done. The car got done about a day or two after that. And I called them back the following Wednesday. That was like 5 days later. And I just wanted to get an update because my salesman said, hey, just let me know how long it's going to be for transport. I want to put the car in a more permanent storage position if it's going to take a while. So I called them back. It's like 5 days later from that 7 to 10 day estimate. I said, hey, I'm just looking to get a rough update on when approximately you guys are going to be picking up. It's still 7 to 10 days. I'm like, well, okay, I'm not playing this, never-ending cycle while they're trying to book up the trucks. So I called a third company, Horseless Carriage, who really came through on this. This was Wednesday, I believe, and they said, all right, we'll pick it up next week, the week of the 8th. We will pick up the car. Okay, I called the second company back. Let's cancel. I got somebody else. So, well, Horseless Carriage came through. They got to it on Saturday, which was the end of the week of the 8th, but they got it on the week they said they were going to get it. And the best part was they picked this car up Saturday at 4 p.m. and they had it here 800 miles away in New Jersey by Sunday at 6. Under 26 hours, they got the car here. So they did a fantastic job. The car got here safe and sound. I got lucky with the timing also. I just happened to have the only truck on the trailer, so he came right here. He didn't have to make any other pickups or drop-offs, so it did work out well. So Horseless Carriage really came through. They were pretty much on par with pricing with all the other big companies, but they came through. The car got here, and I did a very thorough inspection of the car. I checked over all of the add-ons that were put on, the window tint, the PPF, the interior. Everything was top-notch from what I can tell. I was very impressed with everything. You almost can't tell it has PPF on it. It's so good. You can't see the edges. It is just spectacular. The tint is perfect. And I also checked over all of the accessories that came with the car they put on, the air oil separator, the splitter wickers, because there's lots of horror stories about the splitters not being put on correctly. It's perfect. I thoroughly checked it. I was under there with a flashlight. It is perfectly mated to the bumper. Everything, all the screws and bolts, everything looks good. I checked the manual for the air oil separator. Perfect. Everything's routed the way it should. They changed the parts they needed to change. And I have to say, everything looked absolutely perfect on this car. I had that minor little issue I showed on my delivery day where the one connector came out of the shock. That was no big deal. I mean, that might have just been loose from the factory and just rattled out while it was sitting in the back of the transport truck, or maybe the wheel strap popped it off. No big deal. That's no big deal. Popped it back in, good to go. So I don't really hold anybody accountable for that. That was a very minor thing that I don't think anybody did maliciously. So I have to say, the process overall was very smooth. I have to give a lot of props to everybody at Jim Ellis Ford. I'll show above the actual pricing I paid for the car. I did a video breaking that down of everything. Kevin Jeffries, total gentleman. You know, they normally don't sell to people this far away, but because Chad Powell, a local person, recommended me, he made an exception. He was a gentleman to deal with, very simple, very easy. Everything I asked for, he did. When I asked for him to put the red build in, he did it. I asked for the build spec on this, he gave it to me right away. John, the gentleman from finance, was great to deal with. I mainly coordinated him through the phone, and then we were overnighting the documentation back and forth. Since I'm 800 miles away, I'm not driving down there to sign the paperwork. So we overnighted everything. He was good to deal with. Had a couple minor hiccups that I talked about in my finance video with USAA, the finance company I dealt with, but he was very easy to deal with. You know, he asked if I wanted some other things with the car, like extended warranties or whatnot. I just said, no, I wasn't really interested in that. And he was great. He wasn't pushy. He's like, okay, if you're not interested, that's fine. And by far, the person that probably I bugged the most, my salesman, Gio. Fantastic. Pictures, updates, very on top of it. And I made him run around and collect everything the car came with. Keep the bags on the seats, keep the build sheets, all the stickers that came on the windows, save all the spare parts from like the air oil separator, save the boxes. He was running around. I gave him a big list of stuff to save, print off Oasis reports and all that kind of stuff. And he sent me this huge picture of all the stuff on his desk. So all the people at Jim Ellis Ford were fantastic. I have dealt with so many Ford dealers in my life, buying 350s, 500s, Raptors, and all the other Ford vehicles I've owned in my life. And they were one of the few dealers that I've dealt with that were just no games. This is the process. You know, we're very upfront about it, and they were very reasonable about their prices. No games, no runarounds, no last-minute changes on pricing. You know, I signed the contract with them right away, and it was smooth. It was a flawless process. I mean, some people said I paid a markup by buying the add-ons. Actually, by sheer coincidence, I just happened to be at my local detailer the day before this showed up. I was there getting the PPF. A little bit of an issue with the PPF on this car, so I just had the local guy just fixing it, a little issue on it. And he knows I was in the market for 500, so I was telling him that I had to buy a bunch of add-ons for this car, and he basically said, all right, for me to do all the add-ons that they did was about $4,000. So considering everybody else is charging $25,000 over or more for a carbon fiber track pack, and I basically essentially paid a $3,000 markup for this car. That's great. I can live with that. That's very fair pricing. They made a little bit of extra money, and I got overall a very good deal. If you want to include the almost $2,000 I paid in transport for this car, I basically paid a $5,000 markup on this car. That's kind of what it all comes down to. And I'm perfectly okay with that. You know, they were very reasonable compared to all the other dealers that were not. So overall, the process was fantastic. Chad Powell was great, running around and getting pictures and helping me even find this car, and the ease of process with everybody at the dealer made this buying experience overall very good. One that I wasn't really sure how everything was going to pan out when I attempted to purchase a GT500. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Lots more content to come. Thanks for watching.